Hey guys, so today we're going to be talking about the war at sea. So today's content is Naval Blockade, U-boat campaign, unrestricted submarine warfare, anti-U-boat technologies, and the Battle of Jutland. So first of all, you have the Naval Blockade from 1914 to 1919. So it's a British naval blockade on Germany and the Central Powers. So it's what it is. So it is a type of economic warfare utilizing Britain's powerful navy to cut off supplies to Germany and the Central Powers, but essentially it was mainly Germany. So they would lay mines and declare the North Sea to be a war zone. The objective of the naval blockade was to starve the Central Powers and Germany into submission. Okay, and the consequences were quite successful. Okay, if not very successful. So there were food shortages in Germany. We're going to be focusing on Germany in this video, not about the Allied powers, the Central Powers. So there were not enough food in Germany because they couldn't export, they couldn't import fertilizers from other countries to them because there was a naval blockade in place. So essentially, no crops could be grown. There were also weapon shortages where there were not enough raw materials to make ammunitions. Okay, and would just reduce the ability of the Germans army to fight. And it was one of the main reasons why Germany surrendered. So the objective of the naval blockade was completed. Okay, so it was mission successful. So here is an image. It's quite blurry, but you can make it here. So this is the North Sea, and Germany is here, and they would lay mines around this red curve right here, and British ships would station right here and just be keeping merchant ships away from Germany and keeping Germany at bay. Okay, so U-boat campaign. So in response to the naval blockade, Germany came up with a U-boat campaign. Okay, so the objective was to starve Britain before Germany itself ran out of supplies. So it's just a desperate counter move. I mean, it's not quite desperate and it's quite smart too, but we'll see why the actions were not really smart. Okay, so it was used U-boats to sink ships carrying materials to Britain. Okay, so this was the initial objective. Okay, so hoping to hoping to weaken the British Grand Fleet. This is an image of a U-boat and unrestricted submarine warfare. So it's a branch off it branched off from the U-boat campaign where it literally just sank all types of ships and from whatever country. Okay, of course not from the Central Powers country, but from the Allied countries or neutral countries. Okay, so U-boats would sink any ships in British water. So it could be merchant ships, passenger ships, something like that, and this would prove why this action was stupid. Okay, so the Kaiser Wilhelm II issued this unrestricted submarine warfare, but it eventually, so the consequences, so it eventually sank a Lusitania, a British passenger ship, which killed 128 Americans and made the Americans really angry. So they joined the war and declared war on Germany. So this was a major consequence. And the British, in response to the unrestricted submarine warfare, they would introduce anti-U-boat technologies. Okay, so here is a picture of a U-boat, and this is Lusitania, the British passenger ship. So anti-U-boat technologies, there were four of them. Okay, four main ones. So first of all, you have the convoy system, where merchant ships sail between warships for protection. Q ships, so warships disguised as merchant ships, lure the U-boats in and attack them. There was also camouflage paint, where you paint camouflaging colors on the merchant ships and make them harder to detect. Make the merchant ships harder to detect. Okay. Smoke screen too, so just screen the entire thing. So there was smoke screen, so hard. It also make the merchant ships harder to detect. Depth charges, a type of weapon, just designed in here, okay, in response to the U-boat campaign or the unrestricted submarine campaign, where these would be used by naval ships like warships, not submarines, okay, or aircraft, where these artillery would essentially puncture holes in the U-boats, forcing them to surface and then attack them. You can ram U-boats because they were quite flimsy, or open fire on them. So here's a picture of the convoy system. Okay, so it's also quite blurry, but you can obviously make the outline here. So these are the merchant ships here in a safe zone. It says safe zone here. And the gray area is for the protection area. Okay, so there were there were destroyers, just circling around merchant ships to defend them. And then the enemy submarine, if it tried to approach, destroyers could use depth charges and attack the submarines. And essentially, the merchant ships would be safe in the center. So the Battle of Jutland. So it was the largest naval battle of World War One, featuring 250 ships and 100,000 men. Okay, so it was between the British Grand Fleet and the High Seas Fleet. So Admiral John Jellicoe led the British Grand Fleet along with Vice Admiral David Beatty against Vice Admiral Reinhard Skill, which led the High Seas Fleet with Rear Admiral Franz von Hippe. So Germany was hoping that the U-boat campaign, okay, so initially back to the U-boat campaign, they hoped that the U-boats, would wreak havoc on the British Grand Fleet and significantly weaken Britain from because the objective was to try to starve Britain before Germany, and then would wreak havoc on the British Grand Fleet, which would weaken the naval blockade, and then letting merchant ships through. But since the unrestricted submarine warfare, it was a big mistake. The U.S. declared war on Germany because of it. So Germany had to stop the unrestricted submarine warfare. So now it only can only depend on the high seas fleet. So what happened? Skier, okay, Vice Admiral Skier planned to lure the British Grand Fleet out by decoy attack on merchant ships in the North Sea, and then when they lure out, Jellicoe would be in a trap, okay, and he would attack and hoping to destroy part of Jellicoe's force or dealing as much damage as possible. Unfortunately for him, Jellicoe already knew his plan, and he instead sailed out of port much earlier than Ski expected and waited there for an ambush. Okay, and the goal was basically the same: try to deal as much damage as possible on either sides. So, Ski encountered. Okay, we're going to the map right here. So essentially, Hipper would go out and fight Beatty first. So this was the battle area. Okay, so Jellicoe is just waiting here. This was the battle between Beatty and Hipper. Okay, so Hipper would go out, battle with Beatty, and Ski would support Hipper. Okay, so Ski sank two HMS. Okay, so a new type of ship designed in 1908 from the naval race, which was the building up of navies of Germany and Britain. So they sank two HMS. Beatty's force of Beatty's fleet retreated back. Hipper and Skier chased after Beatty, and Jellicoe and Skier met around right here where they fought. Okay, the main boss fought. So Skier fell into Jellicoe trap. So as he was chasing Beatty back, he fell into Jellicoe trap, and two main fleet met each other. So the Angelico fleet would somehow, okay, inflict heavy damage on Ski fleet and force them to retreat because on that day, at that time, it was really foggy and the communications between both fleet was unclear. But somehow he inflicted heavy damage on Ski's force fleet and forced them to retreat. Okay, so the consequences of the Battle of Jutland. So on the British side, they lost 14 ships, 6,784 wounded, dead, or captured, and captured. So it was able to deploy. However, it was able to deploy 24 warships immediately after the battle. Okay, and able to sustain the naval blockade and the control of the North Sea. The High Sea Fleet lost 11 ships, 3,058 dead and wounded. It was only, however, able to deploy 10 warships immediately after the battle, and it never risked a major sea battle again. So after the Battle of Jutland, both sides claimed victory. British said, "Oh, we won." The Germans said, "Oh, we won." But in my opinion, Britain was the real victor here because, even though they lost more ships, okay, they lost 14 ships compared to 11. The dead, wounded, and captured was twice the amount on the German side, but it was able to deploy 24 warships immediately after the battle, while Germany was only able to deploy 10, and it was able to sustain the naval blockade, which was one of the most important reasons why Germany surrendered in 1918, or why Germany lost the First World War, because it literally starved Germany to submission. The objective was to do that, and it completed it. Okay, it basically forced Germany to surrender because the people could not keep going on. The troops were tired, exhausted, starved. The people were rioting. Okay, and yeah, the High Seas Fleet never risked a major sea battle again. So basically, one walked out with more casualties, but it was still strong. It was, still active, while one, one walked out with less casualties, but it didn't want to fight again. So, in my opinion, the British Grand Fleet really won the battle. Okay, so thank you for listening in today, and